Members of, eu vou pedir licença para falar em inglês, em atenção aos nossos 14 convidados do exterior que estão aqui conosco nessa comemoração. So, members of the board, president, faculty and staff and dear colleagues and dear friends, I'm very much delighted to have you all here, to have had you accepted this invitation to be here with us when the Graduate School of Economics of this Getúlio Vargas Foundation completes 50 years of existence. So it's our golden jubileum. And I'm also very much delighted to have among us the participants of the Financial Economics in Rio, leading scholars from several different departments, top departments from all around the world. So it's a great pleasure to have you here in this date, which marks the beginning of the celebrations that we intend to put forward next year of the 50 years of our Graduate School of Economics. I stand before you here today in this memorial lunch to say some words about our school. And I would like to initiate with how the school started. In 1959, the Brazilian Institute of Economics intended to perpetuate the core of excellence which had been formed between 1946 and 1958. And this core of excellence was characterized by the beginning of the national accounts in Brazil, which has begun here in this foundation, the start of the measurement of balance of payments, which also has been devised by people from this foundation, and the beginning of measurement of price indices. So Eugênio Goudin, Otávio Gouveia de Bulhões started the Núcleo de Economia, the economic core, which lasted from 46 till 58, actually in 1951, was the beginning of the Brazilian Institute of Economics. And in 59, between 59 and 61, we had the Pre-CAE, which is the Pre-Centro de Aperfeiçoamento de Economistas. We have one, that I know, we have one member, one alumnus of the Pre-CAE here, who is Antonio Barros de Castro, who not many people actually associate with this foundation and with our Graduate School of Economics, but he is one of the students that we had in this pre-center for enhancement of economic formation. Okay, then in 1959, 61, there was this Pre-CAE, and in 1961 we started with the CAE, Centro de Aperfeiçoamento de Economistas. In 1962, Mário Henrique Simonsen started as director of the CAE. It would be impossible to say anything about the history of our school without mentioning the name of Professor Mário Henrique Simonsen. He was the mentor of everything. He started enhancing the use of quantitative methods, of scientific methods, of measurement, and of respect for the data that we carry forward to these days. 5 directors have carried forward after the work which was initiated by Eugênio Goudin, by Otávio Gouveia de Bulhões, and by Mário Henrique Simonsen, respectively Carlos Geraldo Langoni, and then who served as director between 74 and 79, when Professor Simonsen left for the Minister of Finance of the government, Ernesto Geisel. And afterwards, Professor Simonsen came back to the school, and we had 4 other directors who were respectively Sérgio Ribeiro da Costa Vellan, and Carlos Ivan Simonsen Leal, our president nowadays, Clovis Daut Lira de Faro, and Renato Fragelli Cardoso. All of these people have guided the school, taken care of the house, for which I am now responsible, and following in their footsteps is a great honor and a matter of great responsibility. The school has always had the role of leadership in Brazil, in academia, in scientific investigations, and not to mention also the role that it had mostly between 1964 and 1985 in the conduction of macroeconomic policy. Just to remind you, the rule that has been used to control our inflation, the wage rule that was used in 1993 when we started with the URV, was actually designed in 1963 and was used in the PAEG, the Plano de Ação Econômica do Governo Castelo de Branco, and was devised in this school by Mário Simonsen. It was also used in some other plans which did not reach success, but of course that was completely out of our responsibility. That was from 1986 till 1994, 8 years of great loss of resources where people were trying to find out if society would respond to very heterodox theses. I also see some names in this audience which reminds us of that period of the school between 1961 and 1966. Professor Reis Veloso was here with us half an hour or 1 hour before, but he could not stay for the lunch because he had to go to a ceremony in Brasilia invited by the President Lula. And he was a member of our class of 1962. Afterwards, we also had some other names like Edmar Bachan from our class of 1964, and many others which are actually not very much associated with the school, but which have passed by the IPGEA and by the CAI. So these were years, these inceptive years have been very important for the school. And I must say that things have not been so quiet as they are nowadays. I do have witnessed a period of time. I started in the school 30 years ago, so I have been here for 30 years of its 50 years. And there was a period when we were not sure if we would really receive our wages at the end of the month. And even if we did, they were like a tiny little fraction of what they are now. So these were years in which we had to struggle to develop what we have reached to develop, this financial strength, this economic stability. And I think everybody here acknowledged that one former director of our school, who is now our president, Professor Carlos Ivan, has been mostly responsible for this trajectory. So we are very thankful the school is very thankful to Professor Carlos Ivan, because without this financial strength that we can have nowadays, our efforts, the efforts of all those who have taken care of the school would not have had flourished as they were allowed to do. So this triple and permanent pursuit of excellence, of competence, and I must say of conscience, has led us to a successful position. I think we have so far accomplished our mission. We rank nowadays, in the words of our Minister of Education, as with the maximum grade. When we look to rankings such like the one from the University of Tilburg, we are ranked as the first in South America and second in Latin America. And our faculty are invited to teach in the most prestigious first-class universities in the world. As our friends here in this Financial Economics in Rio show us, we also receive here leading scholars from all over the world. I would also like to mention that When I say that I think we have accomplished our mission, I think our mission is mostly enlarging human knowledge. But by that, I don't want anybody to think that I am putting theory before practicality, because there's nothing more practical than teaching young or tender minds, as Rudiger Bornos used to say, to be clear about what they think, to be clear about their values. This is very practical. There's nothing more practical than providing to the country over 300 empirical studies based on Brazilian data. There's nothing more practical than being here discussing in a workshop about finance what we have to do regarding the Brazilian situation for the future and so on. So by no means, by saying enlarging human knowledge or deepening human knowledge in this country particularly, I want to emphasize that theory should come before practicality, before pragmatism. So we are very much concerned about being useful to the society and not being, please don't think that we do theory for the simple sake of doing it. We try to be very concerned about trying to foster national development, about embracing the world's problems as our own, and about respecting data, and about trying to wipe out poverty, fight inequality through our studies and through the provision of 1,500 students over all these years. Saying that we have accomplished our mission, which I dare to say, does not at all mean that we should rest upon any glory that we have achieved. It does not mean that the challenges ahead are not difficult to face. They are. We know that we are in Brazil with a very big need that people look at fiscal sustainability, about exchange rate, about violence, provision of justice, having the government provide what the government is supposed to provide, which are the basic functions like regulation, education, health, and so on. Not because ideologically we think government should be these areas. It's just because when the private sector starts to think about providing things that should be the role of the government to provide, what we see is a very bad picture of many buildings being framed with fences and so on. So it's by the nature of economics that we should always be aware of trying to pursue political viability through the teaching the new generations of the role of governments about the good practices of macroeconomics and microeconomics as well. I want to remind you that between 1961 and 1985, everybody who read the newspapers in Brazil was aware of the very strong participation of our school in political economy, because we had two professors who were ministers, respectively, of finance and of planning at that time. But there is also a big role that has been played by our school afterwards. For instance, in the Governo Lula, all the macroeconomic agenda was devised in this school by Marcos Lisboa, who started to develop it and then went to be the Secretary of Political Economy of the government. And many of the things that the microcredit and so many other examples that these two previous governments have achieved in terms of microeconomic reforms has been devised in this school. Also, the fiscal sustainability that was reached in the Palocci era was also very much somebody who was very much responsible for that, who was Joaquim Levy, was a former student of us. So I think that emphasizing the role of our school, not only as a center of excellence for research, but also as how important it has been in terms of leadership, of ideas, of providing good people for good governments and so on. I think it's my role to bring that up here and to reinforce this idea at this date when we start the commemorations of our 50 years. We had 165 offers of professionals, recent PhD candidates from all over the world in Denver, where we have set a ad saying that we are looking for faculty. So that's something that unimaginable some years ago, that a center from Brazil goes there to Denver to offer a job opportunity, and you have 165 job offers, people wanting to come over here to be interviewed and to be candidates for these jobs. But, Mr. President, don't worry, you will not contract all of them. Maybe two, if you allow us. I think the challenges ahead are mostly being sure that we do have the means to continue this excellence, to continue providing practical solutions, continue providing leaders to the most important enterprises, private enterprises. We have here example, our former professor and the first PhD thesis which has been provided by the EPGR, who is Professor Castelo Branco, who is here among us as one directors of the biggest company in this country, private company, which is Vale do Rio Doce. So there are so many examples of people who came through this education and have reached the high offices and the positions in private and public sector. So the mission is going to be to keep all this success, and this is not an easy mission. And what I can say is that we will continue to do our best to preserve what has been devised by the mentor of the school, Professor Simonsen, to continue to try to provide to this foundation anything we can do in order to foster income, in order to foster new ideas, innovations, and so on. And we are ready for this future, and I hope we can achieve what we aim at. Thank you very much.
I shall be very, very brief. I believe it is in Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities that there is a very impacting phrase, actually the first phrase in the book, which says, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was a time of upheaval, it was a time of change. We had everything before us, we had nothing. We had everything in front of us, we had nothing before us." Something like that. The story of the school is very, very long indeed. It's not actually 50 years. It's more likely at least 100, perhaps 120. It starts, the economic side, with Eugène Goudin going to study engineering and economics in France at the turn of the 19th century. He was not the first Brazilian to do so, to leave Brazil and go to a grande école in France. Actually, during the empire, the emperor himself had sent several students to France. Some of them are quite famous in our history, which are Pereira Passos, Edmundo Rebouças, Belfort Roxo, and so forth. Nowadays, we are only remembered by the general public because we are names of streets, squares, cities, and so forth, and people don't know what they had done in the past. In the 19th century, the idea was to bring the most modern technology to Brazil, which was an extremely backwards country then. These people went mostly to France and Germany, and they brought the Intel or the Facebook technology of the time, which was planning for railway lines. And this is how strategic planning started in Brazil, slowly. The restructuring of engineering schools in the 1870s was a great step forward. And it was in one of these schools that Eugênio Goudin studied, the Polytechnical School in Rio de Janeiro, where he got his degree in 1905. And then, after 2 or 3 years working in Brazil, he went to France. And there he had the chance of studying with French engineers that were also studying economics. And when he came back to Brazil to finally work as an engineer, he continued to be very much interested in economics. In the 30s, he already was perhaps the most important, if not the only, Brazilian economist in the full meaning of the word. In 1946, 44, he participated in the Bretton Woods seminar. And later on, when the war finished, he worked with Luis Simões Lopes, the man whose painting, whose picture is there, to create the economic side of the Getúlio Vargas Foundation. The idea was very simple. Brazil had no national accounts, Brazil had no statistics, Brazil had no economics knowledge, except for the writings of Eugênio Goudin and perhaps 1 or 2 students. The rest was a desert. Well, in about 10 years, with the help of the now deceased Alexandre Kafka and others, and of course Otávio Gouveia de Bulhões, the Getúlio Vargas Foundation built an apparatus, a minimal apparatus, which is the origin of a modern national accounting system, price indexes, and even the central bank accounts. We didn't have a central bank or nothing of a sort in 1950. The first initiative is from the beginning of the 50s. And there were no people trained to do national accounting, simply count the amount of money that was in circulation. Okay. Around 1957, of course, 1954, there were lots of troubles in Brazil. Getúlio Vargas committed suicide, a transition government that had terrible problems, and then 55, a new president, Juscelino Kubitschek, and a program for growth. That's called 50 Years in 5. It's mostly ignored by people that many people that worked in J-Porte, J-Com, etc. were linked to the Getúlio Vargas Foundation somehow. So, just to tell you a simple story, we had for 25 years a member of our board here at FGV. He actually died 5 years ago as vice president of FGV, and he was a member of J-Porte. It was our vice president, my regretted friend, Thompson Mota. Roberto Campos was a member of our board too. And most of these people, although very old to have been our students, they had a huge influence in what was being thought and the way we're building our reasoning here at FGV. In 1958, Professor Marinhike Simonsen, and there is no coincidence in names, he was my uncle, I'm very proud of it. He came to teach at FGV. Previously, he had been, like Eugênio Gaudin, the best student at the Polytechnical School here in Rio. He had studied a specialization of engineering that doesn't exist anymore, called economics and engineering. He came in '58, and just after he came, he was invited to go to Harvard. He refused, he stayed, and in '62, he became a director of CAI, as Ruben has told you. CAI transformed itself into the first school in Brazil to yield a master's degree in economics. This was no simple thing. There was a meeting in Itaipava. For those that study economic history, it's very interesting. It's called Meeting at Itaipava, where it was decided by the universities of Brazil that the first institution to have a master in economics in Brazil should be the Getúlio Vargas Foundation, because it was the better prepared. Therefore, we had all the story that Rubens told you. And of course, he had to mention that I was director of the graduate school once. People insist in continue to call me professor. I haven't been a professor for 10 years, and a researcher I haven't been for much longer, unfortunately. However, it was important to find the resources. Without resources, it is impossible to have a good school. Without the resources, it is impossible to attract good people. But it's not only resources that make a good school. The French have a word which is élan. Élan is untranslatable into other languages, perhaps, in the way the French use it. We have adopted the word without translation in Portuguese. And this is a school that has a lot of élan. Right now, the objective of the Getúlio Vargas Foundation is that the school will really go up in the international scale, as Brazil is going up. It's a very pretentious, very difficult goal, but since we have a history of hardships, a very long history of hardships, and of some success, I hope that we will be capable to reach our goals. Our long-term planning is not 1 or 2 years in this institution. It is 20 to 30. So we are looking at a very long horizon to build things. We are accustomed to do that. In Brazil, people don't realize, but there is a stark coincidence between the times where people from Getúlio Vargas are in government and the years where we have the largest growth. I must correct you, Rubens. Where are you? We weren't in government from 79 to 85. We were in government for 6 months in 85. It's just the only correction that I have to make to your speech. And you know the reason. Sustainability, growth come at a price. We are an institution that believes in the two forms of liberalism, meaning civil liberties, the American meaning of a word, and the English one, economic liberalism. We believe in free enterprise. But we also believe that some things have to be planned. Liberalism, economic liberalism, doesn't exclude planning. It doesn't exclude the existence of a state. The state has to be efficient and it has to be efficacious. Efficient means it doesn't have to have a size larger than what you need. Efficacy means that it has to reach the proposed goals. This institution believes that it is the right balance between private initiative, free enterprise, and a state that does its role, providing security, providing infrastructure whenever it is needed, and there is no the private sector is not capable of doing it, that this is the way for Brazilian growth. This year, most likely, and where is Shimura? This year, most likely, we will surpass both France and Britain in terms of GDP. But we have a population that is 3 times bigger, which means that our per capita GDP is 1/3. We are very happy because 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, the police of Rio de Janeiro invaded a slum called Complexo do Alemão and had a huge success. I have to tell you, our public management school was involved in the construction of instruments that made it possible. Henceforth, since our desserts are waiting, I have to tell you, this is a very happy and should be a very gay moment. We are having a seminar in finance. Unfortunately, I'm not capable of attending it. You don't imagine how envious I am of those that have this opportunity. But such is life, and I have a lot of things to do. Many, many things that perhaps are not intellectually so pleasant, but that not as a professor, but as a manager, I have to attend to. Therefore, I finished this very short talk saying to you, for our guests and our ex-students, ex-professors, professors, students, let us commemorate, and for our visitors, be most welcome. Thank you.